So to begin with here, I have a size variable, so you can change the size of the world without having to go through and change the rest of the code. And I have an initializer for the amount of moves the agent has taken. And then I have a initializer for the world as well. So I guess I'll start by showing you a run of at the size equals 3. You can see it cleans everything and it prints out the world every time it moves, and then it ends with agent finished and the time passed and then the number of moves it was taken. Here I'm just showing you what it did with a larger size. You can see it took 46 milliseconds and 241 moves to clean a 12 by 12 grid. So I'll just scroll down here and you can see these two classes. One's for location. It just holds an X and Y value. It makes it easier to set and hold the locations of the agent. And then I have an agent class that just holds the agent's information. It has locations in it that hold the current location and the last visited location of the agent. And in the constructor, it sets the last location to the current location to begin with. The move agent function sets the value at the current location of the agent in the world to be 1, which means it's clean. And then it creates a new location to hold the current location, and then it gets a new location from the getNewLock function and sets the agent's location to that, and then it increases the agent moves since it's moved again. It then sets the agent's previous location to the location that was created inside of this function, and then it sets the value of the agent's new location equal to 2. That way, when it's printed out later, it shows up as an A. So I'll scroll back up and you can see that an initialize world function is called after the size and agent moves and world is set up. The initialize world function gets a new random, and then it loops through all of the items in the world array, and it gives it a random 0 or 1 value. After looping through all the items in the world array, it creates a new location for the agent to start at, and it's a random location within the world. After initializing the world, it shows the starting room to the user by calling the display room function. The display room function loops through all of the items in the world array and just prints them out to the console. If the value of one of the items in that array is equal to 2, that's where the agent is, so I print out A instead of the value. I then create a stopwatch and let the user know that the stopwatch is starting, and then I start it. I then have a while loop that calls move agent and display room while the return value from the complete function is false. The complete function loops through all the values in the world array. If it comes across a value that is equal to 0, or in other words, that tile is dirty, it returns false. If it goes through all of them and it doesn't find a dirty one, it returns true. Now we get to the bulk of the program, which is the getNewLock function, and it returns a location for the agent to move to. So it has 2 locations to begin with, the current location, which is the agent's current location, and old location, which is the agent's last location. I then created booleans for the location of the agent. This was just to help me later on, instead of having to create the same if statements over and over again. Right below it is the if statements that set the booleans to true if needed. Basically, bottom is true as long as the agent isn't on the very first row. Top is true as long as the agent is not on the very last row. Right is true as long as the agent isn't on the very first column, and left is true as long as the agent isn't on the very last column. So the first thing this does is, as long as bottom is true, it checks that the position right above the agent is dirty. If it's not dirty, it moves on to the next if statement. If it is dirty, it returns the location for the agent to move to. This is repeated for top, right, and left as well. If none of the tiles to the top, right, bottom, left of the agent are dirty, it goes on to diagonals. So the first diagonal if statement checks if the agent is in the bottom left of the world, and if the tile to the right and above it is dirty. If it is dirty, it'll return that location. If it's not, it'll go on to the next one. This is repeated for the agent being in the bottom right, the top left, and the top right. This next section is for if none of the surrounding tiles to the agent are dirty, but there is still a dirty tile on the map. I found that if I didn't randomize this, the agent ended up going in circles essentially, so I ended up randomizing the location it went to. So I have an int variable here for the random number between 0 and 7, and I just have it in a while loop in case none of these conditions are met. Basically, a random direction is chosen. let's say direction 1 is chosen. Then it checks that the agent is in the bottom and the left, and it makes sure that the old location is not the top right. If it isn't in the bottom left or the old location was the top right, it'll move on, and it'll skip all the rest of the if statements since the direction is not 1 for the rest of them. And then at the end of the loop, it'll get a new random location, and it'll repeat the process until it can move. Once it's finally complete, it'll break out of this while loop, stop the stopwatch, get the elapsed time, and then it will print out to the console that the agent is finished, and it'll show the time passed and the amount of moves the agent has made.